Hi, my name is Dave Conrad. I'm an EAA member and technical counselor, and I'm going to talk a little bit about engine tech today. This is a Lycoming crankshaft, and I've got the connecting rod for it here. I've got a new set of bearings, and I've got some Plasti-gauge here, and we're going to check the clearance of the bearing between the rod and the crankshaft using the Plasti-gauge. I've got my torque wrench, and I'm familiar with the specifications for this engine, so we're going to go ahead and perform a test and show you how easy it is to really make sure that all your clearances are proper inside your engines. We're going to check the clearance between the connecting rod and the number 1 journal on the crankshaft. And what we need to do first is spin off the nuts. Remove the cap and insert the bearing sleeves. Okay, now we've got our Plasti-gauge. Plasti-gauge is kind of a nifty product. It's a little tiny plastic fiber, and you insert this between the bearing and the journal, and then you torque it together, and depending on how far it squashes out, you can then read the gauge that is on the side of the package. This Plasti-gauge goes from 1/1000th of an inch to 3/1000ths of an inch, and simply they make different sizes. There's a red, which is a thinner one, and generally the green works out for most engine clearances. You have to make sure your bearings and that your crankshaft are clean and dry. We can't have oil present when we're doing this. I've positioned the rod onto the journal, and I've got a piece of Plasti-gauge in my hand here. It's probably about 1.5 inches long, and I'm going to hold that with one finger, and I'm going to install it so that I pinch it between the cap and the rod. Okay, and we're going to spit on our nuts. And we're going to get the torque wrench, and I'm going to torque this in 2 steps. These are 40-pound torque rods, and I'm going to start by tightening them to 20 pounds and taking it up to 40. Now I want to be very careful not to move any of these parts as I'm doing this. So we're looking for 20/1000ths on our wrench, or excuse me, 20 pounds on our wrench. A little bit on each one until we get our torque. $20 there, and 20 there. Now we're going to set up to 40. Okay, we've got 40. Might also add, you want to pull this wrench very slowly so that you don't bypass the click. Stop at the click. So now we're torqued. Now what we need to do is loosen that. Okay, we'll remove our cap. Okay, our plastic gauge squeezed out right here, you can see. And you can also see a trace of it on the crankshaft. If I can spin that up here for you, it's a little better mark on the crankshaft. Okay, so now what I can do is I can take my package, which has got the little gauge off. I'm just going to tear off the end of the package here. And I can compare the width. And I can see from this, by moving this around, that my bearing clearance here is 2 thousandths. And I would do this to all the bearings in the engine, including the main crankshaft bearings. It's a little harder to do that because you have to take the case apart and put it back together a couple of times. But it's well worth it. You'll know exactly where you're at with your bearing clearances, and gives you a real piece of satisfaction knowing that everything's right. I'm Dave Conrad. I hope you've enjoyed this, and I hope you have a lot of fun working on engines in the future. And I hope this one gives me many good years of service, and I'm sure it will.